Welcome to Power Messaging. The easiest way to think about this course is like this. Imagine if you could move a prospect from indecision to decision, even if they weren't thinking about change prior to meeting with you. And imagine if you could differentiate yourself from your competition in such a way that prospects actually cared about that differentiation, so that at the end of your sales cycle, the conversation wasn't just about how far you can come down in your price. And what if you could deliver your message in such a way that even if your prospects didn't make a buying decision for a week, a month, or a year, they still remembered why it was that they needed to choose you? That's what these 2 days are about. It's about solving the problem of what you say and how you say it so that you can impact your sales effort immediately. You're going to start by learning what your prospects want from you. So a recent Aberdeen study of several hundred best-in-class companies identified that their top priority for improving sales performance in a tough economy was to improve sales conversations. That's 53% of best-in-class. Focus on sales conversations. What this tells us is that even the best-in-class sales organizations recognize that they need to handle sales conversations more effectively. So it begs the question, has anyone defined with executive buyers what makes a sales conversation great? And do we know how well that's going? Well, a recent Serious Decision inquiry asked executive decision makers, what do you value most in your interactions with salespeople? Do you know what they said? They said they value expertise on their industry and their business 4 times more than product knowledge or even relationships. 4 times more. So when you think about that, this is relationships. And I know most of you are thinking, whoa, sales is built on relationships. That's what we all think. Relationships and product knowledge. Then the ability to understand business, their business or their industry, they value that 4 times more. It's business and industry knowledge. Now, Forrester Research validated the same thing, but they found that there was one big problem. The problem is, according to executive business buyers, 89% of meetings are considered failures. 9 out of 10 meetings fail to demonstrate that they understand their prospects' problems, and they fail to connect those dots. That's straight down there. 9 out of 10 fail. So what we've done over the past couple of years at Corporate Visions is to take a deeper look at why these conversations fail and what's the impact of those failed conversations. You see, when most people think about a sales conversation, they think of it as linear. First, you engage with your customer. And then at the end of that process, your customer is either going to choose you or they're going to choose them. Right? It's one of those two. Well, are those really the only two endpoints? You all know there's another option. That's no decision, right? And that happens all too often. It's right here, no decision, or what we sometimes call the status quo. Prospects are sticking with the status quo, doing things exactly the way they did before they engaged with you. Now, Sales Benchmark Index puts that number at about 60% of a qualified pipeline. 60% of that qualified pipeline. That's a significant majority, especially when you play out the rest of the conversation. According to the Sales Benchmark Index, about 24% ends up in one business and 16% is lost to a competitor. It becomes clear that sales conversations are failing when you see that 60% of people who engaged, thinking they had a problem, disengaged after they spoke with you because they said, no, we're actually okay. Have you ever looked at your pipeline to figure out what percentage have no decisions? I mean, regardless, it's a big number when you think about it, right? So it's interesting, when you're in this sales process, you're often messaging like it's a battle of you versus them, right? One moment you're up, the next moment you're down, and then you're up, and it's like a spec war is going on, right? You've got a spec war, you've got a great feature, they're in love with it, and then the competitor comes out with another great feature, and they one-up you, and then you're back again, and you have a great conversation, you've got a great relationship, and it's always this back and forth, and it's a competitive bake-off. You're trying to competitively outmaneuver them, to incrementally outmaneuver the other guy. But when you're doing that, you're often having a similar dialogue with what they're having. And what happens is your prospect gets confused. He hears one thing, then another, hears another thing, and he can't clearly see which solution to choose. And what happens when he can't clearly see which solution to choose? He gets confused, and then what does he do? Right, nothing, right? It's no wonder then that 60% end up with the status quo. So the question becomes, really, what's your next best opportunity for revenue growth? Is it really to take an incremental share of this 16% from your competitors? Or is it to take a more significant opportunity here with the 60% that are going to no decision? Your battle for differentiation may be more about overcoming the status quo barrier than it is about competition. What do you think the odds are that you're going to take away one of those 16% away from your competition? Or do you think there's a better chance that you can loosen the grip on one of these 60% that are hanging on to the status quo, no decision deals, and make them yours, right? There's way more opportunity there. So how do you loosen that grip? Well, the reason why so many of the prospects end up in no decision is because you started out acting like you had a sales cycle. But in reality, the customer is way back over here. They are untroubled. Now, untroubled doesn't mean they don't have problems. Everybody's got problems, right? What it means is the problems that you can fix are not top of mind for that prospect right now. They're not deciding between competitors. They're interviewing companies to find out if they need to do anything differently than what they're currently doing. They're not in a real sales cycle. You're actually in the business of loosening up that status quo with 60% of your prospects. That means there's a whole bunch of other steps here, right? First, you have to challenge some of their current assumptions. Your customer needs to know the world is changing and changing fast. And the status quo is not going to get them where they want to go. At this point in your discussion, no traditional competitors are even in the discussion. It's you, it's them, and it's the status quo. Then you have to identify the problems, the threats, the challenges that are holding them from moving back to that next level, right? You're identifying what they need to overcome to do better. Then, and only then, you introduce your solution. You align it with their challenges and needs, and you make your solution critical to them prevailing and thriving in the world that you've presented. At that point, you've changed the entire trajectory of the conversation, the opportunity, and the deal. It's going up here. And as you move further along to the right in that sales cycle, you're going to create significant differentiation between you and the competitors. Your competition is in a different realm now because you're at a different level. So in a recent statistic from Forrester Research, they support this. Executive decision makers said that 35% of the time they'll have an honest bake-off. Honest bake-off is only 35% of the time. Now, what is an honest bake-off? Have you ever been part of a dishonest bake-off? What's that? Do you know what it is? Exactly. It's where they've already made up their mind and they just have to invite you in because they have to have that comparison process. But it's not going to change their opinion. Right? Forrester Research also identified that 65% of the companies prefer to buy from those that created their buying vision. The buying vision. Now, what is that buying vision? Right? Creating the buying vision means that they're saying they will give that business to the company that helps them see the need to change and do something different. And the urgency to do it now. Okay? So here's your challenge. When you assess a company's messaging, their campaigns, their tools, sales training, you're going to discover that upwards of 95% of the content created is meant to answer the question, why you? Which works over here in the bake-off section, right? This is why you. Now, it's partially due to organizational inertia. You know, our big companies are organized by their product lines, their services, so it's natural that your tendency is going to be to lead with your story. Who you are, what you do, why you're so great, right? But the prospect is over here, living in their own story, wondering if the status quo is safe, wondering if at the risk of something, what threats, what challenges,